Welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast. I'm your host, Mike Kaye, here with my co-host, Zack Rosenblatt at the NovaCare Complex following the Eagles' 14th training camp practice. It was a light day, Zack. What did you think?
I was happy it was a light day. Those 2 hour and 35-minute practice. I mean, I know we're like really, physically exerting ourselves out there. The way I have to use my pen on the notepad, like my wrist gets really sore. But it just
You're such a hero. You're so brave.
No, I'm kidding. But it is nice to have a light one after you have the game day, and then you have they had a couple of intense practices. Although today did get intense, like the tempers were flaring. Andre Dillard was involved with most of it. Actually, the rookie has he was really intense. Intensity was there. I know he blindsided, I think, Jonathan Cyprien at one point, and Cyprien had to be held back. I didn't see the play happen. And then there was a scuffle. We couldn't really see from the angle we were at, and we saw Derek Barnett involved with it, but we could not figure out for the life of us who the line was. And then after practice, I guess Dillard had to be calmed down by Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson. He was pretty emotional. And Barnett came over and hugged him. But I mean, those don't happen as often as they used to back in the two-a-days times. The fact that this is pretty much the first scuffle. I think there was a minor one at some point.
Yeah, there was one between Casey Tucker and Sharif Miller, and then Casey Tucker got put on IR with a concussion. So, not that I'm connecting.
And then he was released.
Yeah, not that I'm connecting that.
But it is interesting how much the environment around practice has changed, because they are competing, but you're just not supposed to go as hard, and sometimes that angers guys. I think we've even talked about how Andrew Sendejo, sometimes he seems like the type of guy that's going to start a fight because he still hits hard when you're not supposed to,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we should point out what's funny about all this is this was during a 10-10-10 practice where basically the offense and defense are giving each other good looks in game situations. Like the defense will ask for, big nickel coverage, or the defense will ask for 12 personnel so that they can see practice against that look, and the offense will look for a dime defense, stuff like that. So this is meant to be a more intense install period at competition than anything else. And so it's just very weird that you would have physicality during that type of session.
Yeah, I mean, there is some irony in the fact that the practice they chose to all get riled up on was this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is also one of their quickest practices of the whole load. So
since Nam.
Yeah, since Nam. You love that joke.
People laugh at that.
So you certainly do. So we're basically one practice away from the actual training camp.
In air quotes.
Yeah, training camp's conclusion. So we've got a lot to talk about. There have been some roster moves over the last couple of days. The depth chart's sort of kind of figuring itself out a little bit, even though there's a ton of injuries. So we've got to talk about.
We still have a good idea of what the 2 deep is, I feel like, though.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've got to talk about some of these significant injuries, and then I know you have a game you want to play. I know I'm playing host for the first time.
Yeah, we're testing it out. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
Can't be much worse than the previous host.
Yeah, that's fair. But we're going to let you get to that game soon. So first, I want to talk about a minor move that actually probably in the eyes of a lot of people that pay attention to the draft is a major move.
Oh, okay. You're talking
in Sheldon Gibson. Yep. So Sheldon Gibson was released on Sunday night. He'd been battling an ankle injury. He was waived with an injury designation. So
tell him who they signed to replace him, because he has a name.
Sojourn Shelton.
His name is Sojourn.
I mean,
two Sheldons.
Yeah, two Sheldons.
In the same transaction.
You're only allowed to have one Sheldon with a T.
They've signed some pretty good names. Sojourn Shelton is a high quality name.
Yeah, and he took a high quality beating in coverage.
Also, why are you signing a 5'5" corner? But anyway.
All right, so let's talk about Gibson. So Gibson was a 5th-round pick in 2017. He caught 3 passes for 59 yards over the span of his tenure with the Eagles. Became a pretty good gunner on special teams.
I feel like that line was thrown around a little too much without people actually.
Yeah, you can be a gunner if you play.
Was he that great as a gunner?
He did some nice things,
yeah,
but
that's the funny thing. That's the reason why he stuck around this whole time. Pretty much.
Right, he never developed
and
on
because
offense.
He was drafted.
Yeah, he never developed on offense. You could really see signs during the season that they really didn't want to put him on. He caught a 48-yard pass in a game, and then they just basically forgot he existed.
They chose Kamar Aiken, Jordan Matthews, and Marcus Wheaton over him repeatedly.
Yeah, I mean...
And DeAndre Carter.
When I knew that this was going to be a make-or-break off season is when they had him inactive for Week 17, even though he was supposedly the team's best gunner.
Yeah,
exactly. And Week 17 was supposed to be an important game. I mean, they
weren't guaranteed to make the playoffs. Yeah.
Right. And he looked dejected after the game. So, he's now going to be probably reverted to IR. He'll probably get an injury settlement eventually.
Joe D picks him up.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. He was waived with an injury designation. Typically, teams don't like to do that. There's kind of an unwritten rule in the NFL. Bill Belichick doesn't seem to care about that unwritten rule. The Browns didn't care about it either.
Because unwritten rules are dumb, and you should try and have a competitive advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Joe Douglas wants to...
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be that mad if they pick up...
Right. Yeah, I don't think so either.
He's a good kid.
Whatever. The moral of this whole story is Shelton Gibson, a former draft pick, is now not going to be playing for the Eagles this season, most likely, unless he gets an injury settlement and comes back in Week 15. But so, I mean, we both covered him only for a year, but is this a big loss for them?
I don't think it's a big loss. It's just more the overarching what it means about that 2017 draft. Because if you look at it, you can't control injuries, but so Derek Barnett missed most of his second season.
Sidney Jones
has missed most of his 2 years in the league, but they knew Sidney Jones, that this is his second year. This is when you start evaluating Sidney Jones, I think. Same with Barnett. Rasul, he was the best pick if you think about it in that draft.
Or at least the most durable. Yes, for sure.
I mean, but relative to value and how the role he's played.
Yeah.
Fourth round, Donald Pumphrey, one of the worst of the Howie Roseman era. Mm-hmm. Matt Collins was first, actually, picked right before Tariq Cohen, and he broke his groin. I don't know.
What a groin injury.
He's a 9-year-old man with a bad hip now.
Yeah.
But he missed all, again, you can't control injuries, but he missed all of last year, and he's barely been around. Fifth round is Shelton Gibson, who they just cut and didn't play a role here. Sixth round, they cut Nate Gary initially and then eventually brought him back. But the idea that they cut him...
He wasn't a fourth... he was a fifth rounder, too.
Oh, he was in the fifth round?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he was sixth. And then sixth round was Elijah Qualls, who they cut last year.
Who's bounced around
So that means
everywhere.
they basically have one rookie from this class who you could say contributed to both of his seasons in the league.
Yeah.
And Barnett is... We've talked about how important he is, but... It's kind of interesting that was the year they won the Super Bowl, and that draft really... I mean, Barnett played a role that year, but that was a bad draft. And you and I have talked about this off air, how maybe they gave... Maybe, Joe Douglas has clearly done he did a great job of valuing guys in the margins, and he did a good job with the higher-end draft picks, but maybe his, back of the... fifth to seventh round range wasn't as good as advertised.
Yeah, I don't think we can say it's a bad draft class now, but I think this is a massive year for the class.
Yes.
This is going to make
but most of the class isn't even on the team anymore. Is
right.
The point.
This is going to make or break the class because Derek Barnett
makes it.
Derek Barnett needs to have a really big year. Sidney Jones needs to stay healthy, and Rasul Douglas needs to find a long-term role. So I think those are the three guys. It was always those three guys.
The funny thing is, you feel the best, safest with Rasul because you know what you have in him at least.
Yeah. So it's interesting that Sheldon Gibson was probably the first interesting cut they've made. They got rid of BJ Bello. Excuse me.
For all the Bello heads out there.
Yeah, Bello head. What up? They got rid of Anthony Rush. They got rid of Godwin Igwebuike, and they got rid of Alex Brown. And those were guys that got actually picked up pretty quickly afterwards. I think... the next thing we really should discuss is the injuries, because that is sort of why Sheldon Gibson was dropped.
he had trouble staying healthy his whole time here.
Yeah, I mean, but when you look at, they're bringing in another cornerback, you still have Crayvon LeBlanc sidelined with a foot injury. Jalen's still on PUP.
Darby hasn't done 11 on 11 yet.
Right. I mean, when you really look at it, though, it's not looking good for Jalen Mills.
He's going to be on PUP at the minimum.
Yeah. That's what I mean. So,
I think he was running off to the side earlier this week, but I think somebody said I didn't see it, so I can't confirm that.
In positive injury news, Paul Warlow took part in 11 on 11 drills on Monday for the first time. He's been out there for a couple of days. Boston Scott returned from his ankle injury. DeAndre Tompkins had suffered a shoulder injury against the Titans. He's now back out there. But, we haven't seen Fletcher Cox in a while. Lane Johnson and Dallas Goedert have basically been ruled out for the rest of the preseason.
Yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere, too, because Goedert played in the preseason game.
Right. You look at guys like, Sheldon Gibson, obviously injured before that.
I mean, Hassan Ridgeway, concussion, he's been out. Deshaun Hall was a standout in the preseason game. He's been missing. He went back in after he hurt his shoulder, and he's been out since then. And we'll probably talk about this in a second, but I mean, he was fighting for a roster spot anyway, and then they just signed Eli Harold. So
yeah, Eli Harold's another guy.
They traded for him. Sorry, they traded Ryan Bates, who's best known first time with the Eagles for throwing up.
Yeah, believe me, it was like a movie. It was like an SNL skit. How much?
And for a post-draft podcast where you were almost ready to guarantee him making the team. By the way,
he might make the Bills.
That's a team, not
yeah. But anyway, so hey, they got him some value. Eli Harold.
Yeah, if Eli Harold becomes something.
Yeah. So. There's just a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of injured guys. There's guys that are going to get the opportunity
Nate
to step
Sudfeld
up.
Also, by the way.
Yeah, Nate Sudfeld, Kamugra J. Hill. Like, there's some notable role players out. And
that's funny. Like, it's none of these guys are ones that, like, their season's over because they're not playing, but it's still, like, it adds up.
Yeah, and it's going to play into the numbers crunch when final cuts come, because if you've got a guy who's a 2 or 3 week injury and he's a notable player, you're going to keep him on the active roster because you don't want to put him on IR, because then he's going to miss like a significant amount of time. So I think when you look at the injuries, guys at linebacker, guys at corner, guys at on the offensive line, they're going to get the opportunity to step up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where I would expect the second teams to both be featured pretty heavily. I don't know if Nick Foles is going to play. I would doubt it.
By the way, what I was saying to somebody earlier, like, what a waste of a Jaguars Eagles like Nick Foles reunion. It's just like the second preseason game.
But you know what's big, right?
What?
It's Cody Kessler week.
Uh-huh.
So there's that.
You are
callback jokes. Whoops! I just hit a blind.
that was some karma right there.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we won't spend too much time on Cody Kessler.
I think we covered him enough on the last podcast.
I would agree. So would our listeners.
Maybe for the year, even.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe. We just ignore him. He'll
Yeah,
be
we
the guy
don't
that
even mention him.
Yeah, the guy that
plays for
be
Carson Wentz in week 3, and we don't talk about it.
So anyway, Zach, I know you wanted to do play a little game.
Well, before we get into that, we did talk to position coaches on Friday. I was curious if there was anything that you took away from, or anything interesting you gathered.
Absolutely nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
Because trying to think. Oh, what was the funny quote that Jeff Stoutland said about Wiz?
Oh yeah, so I asked Stoutland about Wisniewski's snapping issue, and he was basically talking about how, like, before practice they have the centers snap to their imaginary friends. I don't even really know what that even means, but like they're snapping before practice and working on it. Wisniewski's had a brutal stretch of just bad snaps. Like, he has at least one a game typically, or one a practice, excuse me, and so. I mean, I don't know how you can trust him as your backup center if he's not.
I'm increasingly convinced that he's not. He's like, the percentage is going down of my belief that he makes the team. Like, I don't know who you replace him with. Maybe Herbig. They seem to like him.
Yeah.
And he is a veteran, so maybe I don't know how the vested veteran thing works. Is he a vested veteran? Like,
yes.
So if they hypothetically cut him and then brought him back, kind of thing, they could.
Yeah.
Nobody was interested in him in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be a guy that kind of is hurt by the amount of injuries that they have, and you can cut him. Yeah, like you said, for week 1, he's not on the roster. His contract wouldn't become guaranteed. You bring him back week 2.
We should go. So who are the guys that that fans should keep an eye on for the vested veteran thing? Because I think that's notable. Because that's the hard part about projecting 53-man rosters. Because there's the initial 53, and then there's the 53 that when they actually play week 1.
Right.
So like the Orlando Scandrick is one, right?
Scandrick's a guy that they'd really need Darby to be 100% ready to go. Another guy, Zack Brown. LJ Fort.
Cyprian.
Trying to think of the defensive line.
I don't think they have any guys.
Eli Harold would be a guy.
Oh, is he vested?
Yes. He's
been in the league since 2015.
I'm trying to think. Wide receiver Charles Johnson.
Worrellow? Well, he is.
Worrellow, yes.
I mean, his contract pretty small, but...
Yeah, I mean, he got a little over the minimum, so it's not really that big of a deal. But then again, for that, you don't want it to be guaranteed. You don't necessarily need or want it to be guaranteed.
And he seems like a guy that if they needed a linebacker in a pinch, they would bring back anyway. Yeah.
Some notable veterans who are not actually vested are Cody Kessler.
Oh, really?
Mac Hollins. Yeah, you have to have 4 years of service.
See, Kessler feels like a guy who's been in the league longer than he has.
Exactly. A guy like Richard Rodgers is a guy who would be a vested veteran.
Yeah, they gave him like a 2-year deal anyway, but yeah.
Josh Perkins is not a vested veteran.
See, I think this is notable because that like factors into the team's decision making. Although last year for no reason at all they kept Wheaton.
Yeah, who was a vested veteran,
and then they cut him. That was a weird.
Probably had a minimum.
It wasn't that. It still was like a weird.
Yeah. DeAndre Hall is not a vested veteran, even though he's been around for a bit. Hassan Ridgeway is not a vested veteran.
Mark and Michelle's not. Even though he's 26.
I'm trying to think of actual
That's pretty much is the important. I mean, Sendejo.
Yeah, Sendejo would be a guy who's a vested veteran. I think Blake Countess would also be a vested veteran.
More just comes down to are you sure you're going to get him through waivers kind of thing.
Actually, Blake Countess would not be a vested veteran. Yeah. He's only been for 3. Sorry. So that's going to factor into their cuts. I think
that's the interesting thing about 53-man because even guys like Cravon, they can't put them on IR until week 1.
Right, correct. Yeah. So to explain that, if you're going to put a guy on IR and you have just the inkling that you might want him to return, he has to be on the initial 53-man roster before you put him on IR. So when you see the
Richard Rodgers last year and Mac Hollins too.
Right. So when you see the initial 53 and they've still got, let's say, Cravon and somebody else who was injured but made the team, chances are they're planning to put him on IR at some point that first week. It's just a matter of when that normally happens is a bunch of guys are now on the waiver wire after final cuts, but your initial 53 has been set. So the next day you can claim guys off of waivers and then put other guys on IR.
Yeah. So jumping off the 53-man thing, I was just kind of curious. So we've had the Thursday night game and then 3 practices that we've since. Is there anyone that you think has particularly helped or hurt themselves? The guy that I think has hurt himself the most is Josh Adams.
Yeah, I think that's...
He already wasn't on great standing, but then he fumbled the ball in the game. I don't think he's ran the ball particularly well in practice either. I know Jimmy Kempsky had a pretty funny video kind of making fun of him. It was more making fun of somebody else from a run last year. He's got... You and I were both high on him, and maybe we just missed the boat on that. I don't know.
Charles Johnson's the guy. That I think he's dropped.
Because they've given him every chance too. Because he's always running with the first team with Mac not out there.
Yeah, he's dropped a few passes. He's kind of been slow on some routes. It doesn't seem like Wentz and him have the connection they did during the offseason.
They tried to, though. They target him.
Yeah, so that's what I'll say about that. Then the positive guy is LJ Ford.
We were talking about him.
Yeah, LJ Ford has.
He's a little more athletic than I expected, but he also is really aggressive, which you never know about a special teams based guy.
Yeah, the Steelers used him only on defense and on passing downs, but I was talking to him in the locker room and he said he really likes playing the run and he thinks that he's really good at it. He is kind of like a tradition from a size standpoint. He's more of a traditional weak side linebacker where he's going to hunt for the ball and rack up tackles and stuff like that. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He sees all the stuff that's on social media about the compensatory picks and all that stuff. He's out there to prove it. He wants to prove it. He doesn't want to be given a job. And I think with Camus Grugier-Hill sideline, Zach Brown struggling to pick up the playbook, seemingly, and Nigel Bradham on the sideline, LJ Ford's kind of the guy who's been earmarked as the backup middle linebacker. He's been calling plays with Paul Warlow not out there either. I think this linebacker group's interesting because any of the top 7 guys could probably make this roster based on circumstances. Yeah, so when I talk about that, I'm talking about Nigel Bradham, Camus Grugier-Hill, Zach Brown, Alex Singleton, LJ Ford, TJ Edwards, Paul Warlow. Those 7 guys could all realistically...
Asante Brown.
Well, no, he's got no shot. But, sorry, Asante. But,
devoted listener of the know.
Hey, man, you can come on whenever you're going to be a co-host probably by the season starts. That would actually be a really good perspective, to be honest. So, that's the guy that's impressed me. Who's the guy that's kind of...
Well, close. So the injury has kind of hurt him, but Deshaun Hall, I thought, really helped himself on Thursday. The coaches have raved about it a little bit, so it depends on how serious it. I mean, the fact that they signed Harold right after, I don't know if Hall affects whether they wanted to trade for Harold or not, but he's a guy that, nobody was really talking about him. It was all Joe Osman. Then Joe Osman gets hurt, and he has been rushing the passer pretty well in practice throughout camp too, so he's a guy I had my eye on. And then offense, I mean, Marco Michel didn't hurt himself, I would say. He had it was one play, but it seems like the coaches really like him. I still don't know if he can make the team. Especially if Mac Hollins is still locked in as the fifth receiver for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mac Hollins has boosted his stock by staying healthy for more than 5 minutes. So
yeah. I think he had a good catch in practice yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Where it sounded like bubble wrap.
Yeah. So he ran like a comeback, and it hit his pads, and I turned to Zack, I'm like, that sounded like bubble wrap. And at this point, I completely understand if you put bubble wrap under his pads.
I'm also... Well, just imagine him being like Bubble Boy out there in practice. They're just really trying not to get him sick or anything.
I mean, I bet, like, if he seems like he's willing to make fun of himself. If somebody approached him with that nickname, I think he would embrace it. So come on, we're talking about standouts. Give me some rapid fire. Let's do this. I was excited for this.
Just throw some rapid fire thoughts at you. Or I'll throw one because he had a play today. Keegan Render,
he's an interesting guy because if Wisniewski doesn't work out at center, Render's been the third string center pretty much throughout training camp. I've never seen him make a bad snap.
What did he do today that had nothing to do with blocking?
Oh, he scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
I was very excited. I didn't see how he scored a touchdown. I just looked up and saw he was in the end zone of the ball. But,
he was saying, I overheard him talking after, and he said he was really focused on making sure he made it seem like he was going to try and block a guy, and then the guy ran by him and he ran in the end zone for the touchdown. That'll be his moment in the sun.
Hey, man, I'm a big fan of Iowa offensive linemen, so I think,
All right, let's see what we got here. Avonte Maddox. We haven't talked about him in a while.
He's had some good plays over the week. I just think he's steady and consistent. I think quarterbacks are kind of avoiding.
Great pick. He had a great interception yesterday. The one that was a bad throw from Carson. It tipped off of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's hands, and he dove and cut.
Yeah, it was a nice play. Rodney McLeod in coverage.
So Rodney McLeod came up a little limpy after that, but he says he's fine.
Yeah, and he had the veteran day off today, we should note. What else you got?
Let's see, Derek Barnett. Because he's finally been doing 11 on 11, so...
Derek Barnett made a man cry today, so I think he's doing pretty well. No, Derek's looked good. I think they've been easing him back, knowing that he's going to be ready to go, and that was not an injury I had any concern about, because it did kind of seem like they were taking their time. I mean, Josh Adams had the same surgery later.
Yeah.
And so if Josh Adams can take it, you're just protecting your asset. So I thought... Well, I like that. Protecting your assets. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
This is a family show.
Trayvon Hester. He had a good game. Well, he had that play the other day.
I think Trayvon Hester's going to be one of those guys that's like a utility dude that sticks around forever. I know that sounds very weird, but one of those guys that just...
I think Jim Schwartz really likes him, too.
He's like a nameless dude that you've constantly... You see 6 years later and you're like, wow, he's still on the team. That's impressive. Like a Najee Good for the defensive line. I could see him being that type of guy.
I mean, he's had 2 blocked kicks. That's something for a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Your boy Malik.
So, here's the thing.
I know you talked to him yesterday, so...
Yeah, he's a guy that really wants to earn his job. He doesn't want to be given it. He and Timmy, which is weird because he and Timmy Jernigan are having seemingly having a competition, and they're going to rotate because Malik's the better 3 technique, the better rusher, and Jernigan's the better against the run, playing 0 and 1 technique, opposite Fletcher Cox. Jernigan's having a better camp. I don't think it's close either.
I didn't notice Jernigan in the game the other day.
Yeah,
Malik almost got a forced fumble on one play.
Right. I think Malik's more of a gamer anyway. But it's interesting. I think he's really kind of been humbled by what happened in Jacksonville, and I think he's really
going back.
Yeah, he's approaching this the right way, if there is one, for a guy who was a former Pro Bowler just 2 years ago and somewhat seemingly got scapegoated because of his contract. he's going to be somebody I would bet that he plays against Jacksonville. This is a big thing for him.
Well, because I was eavesdropping a little bit on you guys talking.
Yeah, you are weird like that.
I was walking by because I think you would ask him like why he played in the first game, and it was because he wanted to like prove himself or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I find that that's like an interesting because he just got like a nice contract. He been paid quite a bit. He obviously didn't have to play in that game.
Yeah, he's a guy that's known for wanting to live up to his contracts. Like when he got that $100 million deal in Jacksonville, he was like, I want to make every cent of this and I want to earn it. I think he's a very self-aware guy, and I think man, I feel bad for whoever's going to play left guard in that game, that preseason game.
Who even is, I mean,
Andrew Norwell is their starting left guard, but if they don't play him, some scrub.
Jackson is going to be motivated to get in there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I hope Foles plays like a series. He probably won't.
I would probably bet against it.
So Jake Elliott, we haven't really talked about him much.
Really inconsistent, has been missing some kicks in practice, missed a 40-yarder in the preseason game. I was of the belief that they should have brought in a leg, not necessarily for competition's sake, but to keep his leg fresh. He's not getting a ton of field goal reps, but you're also putting him in a situation where when he misses, he's the only guy missing. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he does over the next 2 preseason games, because if he continues to be inconsistent, you've got to do something. Like even if it's bringing in like a kickoff specialist for like a week or whatever. But
I doubt they do that.
Yeah, I doubt they do that. But of the 3 specialists, he's the one guy that's really sticking out as kind of having kind of an up and down situation.
Another guy we haven't talked about much, but I think coaches have been really happy with is Isaac Sayamalo.
Yeah, Isaac's been playing very, very well. They really like him as both the starting left guard and the backup center. Yeah, and he can snap pretty well.
I was say the fact that we haven't heard his name much is like really good sign, because in the past he was either because of bad snaps or he was playing poorly. So
yeah, and
progress is good.
I spoke with him a few a few weeks ago and asked him kind of, what's the goal? He's like, I want to be held to the same standard as the 4 Pro Bowlers on my offensive line. He wants more than that. His extension wasn't very big for a starting guard, and I think he knows that. I think he's very well aware, and he wants to prove himself, and I think he's got all the tools to be a successful guard in the NFL. He did some great things last year. He did some good things last year. He did some bad things last year. It's correcting those bad things.
All right, Clayton Thorson. He since his bad game, he hasn't done any glaring errors, is how I would describe it. Like he hasn't had any amazing throws or anything.
What can be said about Clayton Thorson that hasn't been said about the Titanic? I mean, it's really one of those. He is. I mean, look, even when he's making throws, they're not great. I mean, it's why you didn't find that Titanic joke funny? I thought it was pretty funny. No, Thorson's had some moments in practice as of late, but it's just like it's too little too late. He's not, even when he makes a nice pass, there's still 2 bad ones that he's going to throw. I'm perplexed at them using a 5th round pick in a 5-pick draft.
One thing I don't get about him is that they don't give him they don't give him a chance to get going in practice.
Well, I mean, that's typical for a 3rd or 4th quarterback.
They use a draft pick on this kid, and they need to figure out if he's even capable of being it's hard. I understand he hasn't been good, but it's also hard for him to get in a groove when he does 2 handoffs in 1 throw and then they pull him out right away.
I think that's fair. I think your point is fair. I think
I get why that's what you do with the 3rd string guy. But.
Yeah, like even Cody didn't really have a lot of reps today.
Yeah.
Maybe they've made their mind up. Maybe they know that they're going to keep him anyway.
Or maybe they made their mind up in either direction.
Right. So he'll be somebody to watch. I'm hoping
he'll get more reps this week than last week, probably in the game.
In the game, yeah, maybe
like the 4th quarter or something.
I'd like to see a full game of him.
Yeah.
I think it might be dangerous for his teammates, but I would really like to see a full game.
Christian Hackenberg level excitement there.
Yeah, I mean, how
did this get thrown? We need to keep that going.
That will be the name of the 4th episode, the recap of the 4th preseason game if he gets the whole game, which I hope he does.
It's just the how did this get thrown game.
Yeah.
All right, Corey Clement. I thought it's been interesting that maybe they're easing him back, and maybe they aren't worried about him, but he's only been running with 3rd and 4th string guy or 2nd and 3rd string guys, and maybe it's hard for him to get things. I haven't really seen anything from him, so I think he's safe still. But I just find it interesting that he seems healthy now, and they still haven't done anything with him.
I think they're trying to see a lot of what they have in Jordan and Miles and Darren with the first team. I don't think.
Well, I don't necessarily think he would play with the first team, but I would think he'd be getting more reps than Wendell Small would.
Sure. I mean, maybe he's on like a pitch count or something in practice.
He is the fourth string running back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think
he's a good fourth string running back.
I think he's going to make this team. I mean, nobody in the group of non-Sproles, Sanders, and Howard has stood out. Even Wendell Smallwood's having a very quiet camp.
Yeah.
So,
the Boston Scott Hive has quieted down, too.
Yep. It's been rough.
Yeah.
But, I think their 4 running backs are set, barring injury.
All right, here's one guy that we haven't talked about much because he's been banged up, and I think you and I both think he might not make the team. Blake Countess.
Yeah, I think he's done. I think
I think we both didn't think he was as much of a lock as everybody else seemed to approach him as.
Yeah, he's been battling a hamstring injury recently. We're presuming that that's what the 2 injuries he had before were. But yeah, you can't make the club in the tub or whatever they say.
Yeah,
so
yeah, you said that wrong the other day.
Yeah, what did I say?
Dave Zingaro, you can't make the team in the tub or something.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so we know me. That's kind of
we know me.
But yeah, I think he's going to have a very difficult time making this team. I could see that him being a guy that they put on IR after the 53-man cut, and then maybe bring him back in case they have injuries. But Andrews and Dejos are in his spot on this team. The coaches are that's the one thing. You brought up the coaches.
Yeah.
The coaches raved about him. And I think that's notable. I think he and LJ Ford are definitely making this team. You can say goodbye to that extra compensatory pick. This team wants to win a Super Bowl. Here we go. That's basically what their mindset needs to be.
I agree. So Andre Dillard, I think we raved about him pretty good after the game. No, we talked more. I don't even know if we really talked about him on Thursday. Actually, I think about it because we were so focused on a quarterback who must not be named. But Andre Dillard, he had a really good game on Thursday.
For sure.
He obviously is an intense practicing player, and he's been good all of camp, honestly. I mean, he's had battles of sweat. I think he's won more of them than he's lost.
I think he's got a chip on his shoulder, which is weird for a first-round pick, but he wants to prove his toughness, and I think he's gone about doing that the right way.
I agree. All right, we can let's end on JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
I wouldn't say he's had an amazing camp. I would say he's had an interesting camp. He kind of disappeared for about a week and a half.
He's been better for the last,
Yeah, he had a good preseason game. That was a very good preseason game for him. I think he's struggled in padded practice, which is weird because he is a very physical guy and a bigger guy. But I think he's just kind of getting the timing right, and it just didn't seem like Carson Wentz and him had the chemistry that they did in the offseason program, but they're slowly but surely getting it back because he's been working with the second, third, and first string. He's been moved all the way around. I think he's going to have... This is a big preseason for him because I think he's going to have a lot of time to prove himself. He's not going to be a superstar right off the bat. It's just not going to happen. But I do think he'll have an offensive role this year.
Who are you most intrigued to watch on Thursday?
Cody Kessler. I mean, that's the story.
Shaking my head.
But I mean, that's the story. He was dismissed from Jacksonville. He is a guy who is now trying to become a serviceable journeyman backup number 2. I think that he's good enough to last 3 to 6 games behind Carson Wentz if needed. I'll reiterate, I think if Carson goes down, you're done. But he's interesting. Another guy I'm really interested to see is if Marco Michel can kind of expand on himself. I think...
he needs to do that every week to make the team, so...
Right. I think another guy that's very interesting is... DeAndre Hall, just because I think he's had a quiet but good camp, and he's facing a very
long odds.
Yeah, long odds, and then Trayvon Hester. I think Trayvon Hester is a guy who can really stick out and make some noise. And their offense, the Jaguars' offensive line, especially the depth groups, are terrible. So he should be able to eat. And Josh Sweat is another guy who got mixed reviews. So
Jordan Mailata, who it seemed like some people thought he was awful. I didn't watch every one of his plays, but the ones I saw weren't good. And then there are people who were raving about him. So I am going to look a little more at how he plays on Thursday, I would say, because it's a big game for him.
Yeah, I think all these offensive linemen, Matt Pryor is a guy that even the coaches were he kind of overextended at times. I always look at the first preseason game kind of in like a vacuum because it's like nerves and all this other stuff. Half the guys in this game have either not played in a very long time or have never played in an NFL game, or they're probably pretty bad. So now you've kind of got that perspective, and I think, you know, Clayton Thorson, if he gets playing time, it's entertaining for us one way or another. You know, man, we are going to get some, like, letters about Clayton Thorson after this one. But
we're not the only ones doing this.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm looking forward to a post-game, which we will talk about everything.
What can we get mad about this time?
Yeah. We'll talk about everything.
I enjoyed that pod. I know some people did, some people didn't, but I had fun.
Well, that's all that matters, Zach. So, thank you for listening to the No Huddle Show podcast. Make sure to subscribe to all of our platforms that we got going. You know, we will talk to you after the preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval. Zach.
The return of Kaye to Jacksonville, by the way. Yeah. We didn't even mention that. It took us this long.
I was hoping we wouldn't. Anyway, we'll talk to you soon, man. I guess that's the thing.
You were great until the end there. You just
maybe you should. These are the rough cuts.
We're keeping this in.
This is a rough cut. Anyway,
thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening.